Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Yawn. Rubbing her eyes, Een looked up and saw that Shiro was currently carrying her on her back. "Mom," she called out. "Emin, you finally awake, sleepyhead." Shiro smiled. "Yeah, where are we going?" "We're going deeper into the demon territory. They undid one of the barriers to reveal a completed fort, so we're going to be invading it this time." Shiro smiled. "Are you sure, Teach? I don't think I'll be able to help much since my level is a little low when compared to the ones at the fort." Lysandra frowned slightly. "Don't worry, you'll be fine. I've already checked out the average level inside the fort, and it's only 45. You're not too far away from that, so it's fine." "Level 45 is crazy for me. I'm only level 38, Teach." Lysandra cried out. "It's not crazy, little Lise. Mom could kill level 50s as level 38. I think she could kill them when she's level 30 if it wasn't for her injury." Een chipped in as she made herself comfortable on Shiro's back. Lysandra wanted to say something, but no words came out. The only reaction she had was to widen her eyes in disbelief, an action she had been doing often after meeting Shiro. "Anyways, you'll be fine. Think about it this way. If you're careful with your placement, being alone against a group is beneficial. Not only do they have to worry about friendly fire, not all of them would be able to attack you at the same time. Just be careful with your placement, and you'll be fine." Shiro smiled. "If you're not confident, I'll help you storm the first line of defense. After that, I'll cover you from above with Een. Argot's not like what I say will change your mind anyways." Lysandra sighed. Arriving at the fort, they could see 3 layers of defenses. The outer wall had several sniper towers filled with archers. In addition to this, there was also the presence of Igni Colossus. With the archers warning the main force about an attack, the Igni Colossus would fling flaming rocks towards the intruders. "It's not too bad. I can take out the snipers and get rid of their eye for now," Shiro muttered. Touching her bracelet, she pretended to take out her heavy bow. "Wait, we're starting already," Lysandra cried out since they were still quite far away. "We should take care of the archers first. I have a way to get us closer to the fort quickly," Shiro replied. Drawing back on her bowstring, Shiro created the Calamity Dragon Arrow. Boom. The formation of the arrow caused a heavy gust of wind to explode outwards as both Een and Lysandra quickly stabilized themselves. However, Shiro wasn't done. Since there were multiple archer towers, a single arrow would not be enough. Kish, kish, kish. Splitting apart one by one, Shiro was holding on to 4 arrows at the same time. Injecting some dark star element into the arrows, the tips burst into purple flames. Tzzzz. Lightning flickered off the body of the bow as she aimed it up into the air. "Little Lise, I suggest getting behind me," Een suggested. Tilting her head in confusion, Lysandra did what Een said. Bang. The force of the bow launching the arrows into the air caused the ground under her to crack apart as a cloud of dust was created around Shiro. Arrows left 4 separate trails of light behind them as they flew through the air. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro estimated that it should be high enough. Flexing her finger, the arrows split themselves into 3 copies with each one flying towards an archer tower. Boom, boom, boom. Looking at the explosion of dark purple fire in the distance, Shiro nodded her head in satisfaction, since she knew that there were bound to be some fire inside the towers. By adding the dark star element, she was able to amplify the power of her spell. Right then, with the towers taken care of, let's move. Shiro smiled. Grabbing Lysandra, she jumped into the rift with Een following right behind her. "Mom, with Rift Walker becoming tier 3, you'll get a much bigger speed bonus inside the rift, and you can also stay inside for much longer as well," Een said as she was casually jogging beside Shiro. "I can tell." Shiro nodded. Looking over at Een, who was keeping up with her easily, Shiro couldn't help but feel a little grateful that the C-classed enemies that she had faced in this quest were mostly strength-based enemies. If she was against a speed-type demon, her first instinct would naturally be to run the F***CK away. Jumping out of the rift, they found themselves face to face with an Igni Colossus. Throwing Lysandra to Een, Shiro tapped her necklace and summoned her swords. No 6th sword, she thought, as she would have expected the dark star element to give her another sword. No matter. Twisting her body, She shifted Ataraxia's element to metal for more damage overall. Asterisk Poochie. In a few short moments, deep lacerations could be seen all over the demon's body. He opened his mouth in an attempt to breath fire on Shiro, but she flicked a tiny spark of dark star element in his mouth. Asterisk Boom. Combusting into a ball of purple fire, the demon crumbled away into ash. Walking to the edge of the wall, Shiro looked down and saw several fireballs being shot towards her by a legion of Igni Colossuses. Tisk. Clicking her tongue, she snapped her fingers and raised her palm in front of her. Asterisk KRRRR. Ice crystallized in front of her as it continued to spread. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Even though the ice shield was taking heavy hits, there wasn't a single fracture or dent. At most, it was just a small layer of ice that was melting from the heat. Are you ready, Lisa? Shiro asked. No. Too bad. Get ready then. Shiro replied with a smile. URG, you don't really take no for an answer, do you teach? Little Lise, you've been with Mum for a while now, you should have gotten used to this hee-hee-dot. Ian chuckled as she stroked Lysandra's hair. You're right. Fine. See you in a bit. Lysandra sighed as she hopped off the wall. Landing softly on her feet, she retrieved 2 swords and dashed into the crowd of Igni Colossuses. Their size is huge, and they focus on long-range combat. While their physical prowess is strong, they have heavy bodies, meaning their reaction is a little slow. She analyzed. Flaring up her aura coat, she flashed behind the Colossus's legs and slashed both her sword at the back of his knees. Quickly jumping away from the area, she saw the Colossus fall and create a domino effect with the other demons. Good job, Shiro praised as she snapped her fingers and shattered her ice shield. Morphing the shards into spikes, she sent them flying towards the demons. Make your way towards the main building. I'll cover you from above. Shiro called out. Got it. Lysandra nodded as she dashed to the next layer of defense. Ian, care to give me a lift? Shiro asked, glancing back at Ian. Of course, this baby is obedient after all. Ian grinned as she morphed back into her phoenix form. Hopping on her back, Shiro flexed her fingers and created her sniper. Ian flapped her wings and flew high into the sky. Glancing through her sniper scope, Shiro helped reduce the amount of pressure on Lysandra. While she couldn't kill them, since the recoil induced by the sniper would fling her off Yin's back, it was enough to just stun them. It allowed Lysandra to get more EXP and level up. Plus, she didn't need the EXP right now. The more times she pseudo-level up, the harder it is for her to level up later on. Right now, with the amount of EXP she had received, she would technically be level 53, but since all the EXP was earned before the class up, it was wasted as she wasn't getting as much stat points as she could. Asterisk bang 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 bang. As she continued to fire her sniper, she started to notice a small problem. They're all long-ranged fighters. No competent commander would leave their fort like this. She muttered in suspicion. Sending out a pulse of mana, Shiro wasn't able to scout out the inside of the fort since her mana was blocked by something. No, something is definitely wrong. Lisa, retreat. Shiro called out over the crystal. Patting Ian on the head, she gestured for her to go grab Lysandra. Asterisk key. As Ian swooped down to grab Lysandra, Shiro made sure to keep her guard up on what could be inside the main building. Changing her sniper to a bow as to not raise suspicion, she helped Lysandra onto Ian. Why are we going back, Teach? Weren't we doing good? Lysandra asked in confusion. We were, but it was unnatural. The demons aren't idiots. As if they would just defend a fort using long-ranged forces. We're heading back now. Shiro shook her head. There were simply too many uncertainties inside the fort. Plus, she wasn't about to waste one of her power-up items just so that they could escape from something that could have been avoided. As they left the area, a few pairs of eyes glanced towards them from the main building. They're gone? Shame. A feminine voice chuckled slightly. She's not as dumb as we were told. Previously they just razed through everything, but it seems like they do have brains after all. Another replied. What do you think of that bird and the weapon she used? Bird looks tasty and the weapon is strong. From the looks of things, the weapon is probably a bow. Well, it'll be easy to find the bird when the war does start, so we just have to be patient. The king has been waiting for years now. Yeah, a few more days shouldn't be hard. Meanwhile, Shiro, who felt several pairs of eyes lock onto her, felt cold sweat down her back. Each of the stairs gave her the feeling of danger, as she knew they would be in serious danger if they had continued into the fort. Even if she had the items that boosted her power to the next class, the EXP would be wasted, along with the fact that she didn't know how many more there were inside the fort. Showing Ian the way back to the kingdom, Shiro crossed her legs and started to contemplate about everything that she's learned so far. Right now, there are 3 main sections to this quest. Number 1 is that I have to defend the kingdom, negotiate with the other powerful beings to work together, and the final section is to defend the fallen god's corpse. As for side quests for extra points, one of them is definitely to get Lysandra to level 50, but right now as it stands, that is pretty much impossible if I didn't want to waste one of my life-saving items. Then there's also the fact that I need to ask the king about the medicine, along with finding out about what happened to Lisa's brother. She thought to herself as she understood that the more she found out about the quest, the more points she would receive, along with a better grade. Nice. If I can complete the class up requirements and evolve, I can probably help Lisa get to level 50, since I wouldn't mind using one of the charges of the Calamity Dragon scale. I'll be benefiting from that anyways. But if I used it now, it'll only cause me problems later on, since the EXP I need would be much bigger. Shaking her head, Shiro was in a small dilemma. On one hand, she could use one of her life-saving items uses to get a better grade in this quest, since she knew the rewards were going to be bountiful. But at the same time, she would be making life a little harder later due to the level ups becoming harder. However, if she was going to save her item, she would be missing out on a good opportunity. If just the base reward is a wish bag and an emergency bag, then the rest was surely going to be worth it. Both choices had their own appeal, but Shiro understood that there were bound to be opportunities in the future. I guess I'll see how it goes. If Lisa manages to reach level 50, then that's a bonus. If not, I still get an item that I need. Shiro thought. As Ian approached the kingdom, Shiro saw several guards gather on the walls. Right? They don't know about you. Ian, let's walk from here, Shiro said as she hopped off with Lysandra. Morphing herself back into a human, Yin's first actions were to climb onto Shiro's shoulder again. You really like this spot, don't you? Shiro asked, raising an eyebrow. It's comfy after all. Ian nodded her head happily. Walking towards the castle, the guards were a little on guard since they just saw a phoenix approach their location. However, since the phoenix was with the royal tutor, Shiro, and their princess, Lysandra, they let the two pass. I'm going to go talk to your father. Take this time to rest, okay? Shiro smiled as Lysandra nodded. She couldn't wait to sleep in a proper bed since she had been resting out in the wild for almost a month. Watching Lysandra go back to her room, Shiro made her way towards the throne room with Ian. She was going to ask him about the demon corpse and the reason for the notes. But most importantly, she was going to ask about the medicine he took, since that could be helpful to her. 4. You seem to have quite the fruitful journey. The king raised his eyebrow after seeing Ian following behind Shiro. Indeed. This is Ian, self-proclaimed daughter of mine. Shiro smiled as she gestured for Ian to say hi. I'm not self-proclaimed, Mom. You hatched me, fed me, and looked after me. If you're not my mom, who is? Ian pouted. Daughter? Who's the father? The king asked curiously. He was also a little concerned since Shiro barely looked legal. Plus, her daughter was almost as big as her. Like I said, she's not my blood daughter. You can think of her as adopted. Shiro sighed. Then why does she look so much like you? Yeah, if you're not my mom, then why do I look so much like you? Ian grinned as she hopped around Shiro. Grabbing Yin's head, Shiro ignored her screams and looked towards the king. Anyways, ignoring this dumbass daughter of mine, I got a few questions for you. We should probably talk in private since this is something we don't want others to hear, Shiro said as she gestured to the guards around the place. Amen. Very well. Come with me, and we shall talk in private. The king nodded after a moment of thought. Leading her to his study, the king sat down on the main chair behind his desk and gestured for Shiro to sit down. Ian, sit by the side for now, Shiro said as she handed Ian a C-ranked mana stone lollipop. Nodding her head, Ian followed Shiro's instructions obediently. All right, important things first. Shiro sat down as her face was serious. Before coming back, we found a fort not too far from the border. There were several C-class demons inside, and I can guarantee that they will destroy your forces with ease if you're not prepared. As for their preparations for war, I've already tried to delay them as much as possible while also training Lisa, but as you can tell, there's a limit to how much I can do. She's managed to reach level 39 after we invaded the fort, but that's still a far cry from level 50. Shiro said seriously. Frowning slightly, the king nodded his head. It's as you say. The estimated time for war had been delayed a little, so we were able to get more reinforcements from the mainland. The average level of the army had been increased up to level 40 plus thanks to the time that you've bought. How did you even do that? With me and Lysandra spending almost a month in the demon continent, I was only able to raise her level to 39. So how did you manage to get the EXP needed for everyone? Shiro asked, raising one of her eyebrows. That's because we're siphoning their latent potential in order for us to survive the current tide. No need to think about the future if we can't make it to that point. The king shook his head. Siphoning their potential? What do you mean? Shiro frowned. Within the batch of supplies provided by the mainland, there was medicine that helped increase a person's power at the cost of potential in their later life. Oh, do you have one on you now? I want to have a look at this medicine. Shiro narrowed her eyes slightly. I do. Here it is. The king nodded and handed her a pill. Potential Awakening Pill, purple. A pill that will awaken your potential early in exchange for a harder life later on the line. Examining the pill, Shiro could feel a strand of dark mana. F***CK. She cursed in her mind as she realized what kind of pill it was. Sighing heavily, she crossed her legs and held her chin while looking at the pill. Seeing this, Een realized that something was wrong since Shiro would have this face when she was thinking about something seriously bad. This isn't a potential awakening pill, it's demon possession pill. While the effects are similar to your body exploding with potential, your mind would be consumed once the maker activates the command. This kingdom is F***ked. Shiro frowned deeply. There was no need to tell the king now, since there was nothing he could do. It was better that she didn't tell him anything so that he could keep morale up and make the most of his army before they died. From her memories, the cure for the demon possession pill was almost non-existent. Unless one made a powder with the body of whoever created the pill, it was impossible to cure. However, the fact that such a sinister pill made its way into the supplies meant that there was a spy. So right now, not only are our movements monitored, even our army is basically gone. Seems like I'll have to take matters into my own hands. Shiro thought as she looked up from the pill. Who has eaten the pill so far? She asked. Just the soldiers in the army. We prioritized on raising the levels of those who were weaker. I'd say more than 70% have eaten the pill now. The king said after checking some documents. Well, just a warning from me. It's best that you don't eat this pill for sudden power gain. Shiro shrugged. Anyways, speaking about medicine, what kind of medicine did you eat to recover? From what I heard from Lisa, it seems like you were injured by your own son. Hearing her question, the king sighed heavily. Allowing the king a moment to think about whether or not he wanted to tell her, Shiro sat there patiently. I was indeed injured by my own son. I don't know what it was that made him convert to the demon side, but that doesn't matter anymore. As for the medicine, it was the rebirth pill. It allowed me to hang on to my life. The king replied. Seems like it was a bit too soon. He hasn't told me any more information about his son, but at least I know the type of medicine he used. Do you have any more rebirth pills? Shiro asked. I don't have any more on me, but I think I can get some in a few days' time. I'll need to put in a request for a thought. Could it be that you want one as well? Yeah. As you guessed before, my body is injured, so I was hoping to recover a little before the war so that I could help out. Shiro smiled. I see. I'll put in a request for the potion for you. Thank you. Oh, also, final question from me. What is it? The king asked. Fallen God Corpse and the defense nodes. What do you know about them? Shiro asked as she smiled lightly. Boom. The king didn't even respond as a heavy aura burst out of him. Oi, horny old B** starred who F***CK's first thing in the morning. How dare you raise your aura at my mom? Een frowned as her eyes gleamed with annoyance. Releasing her own aura, the temperature of the room shot up in an instant as she suppressed the king. Covering his mouth, a trail of blood flowed out from the corner of his lips. Darling, don't raise the temperature. You know I hate the heat. Shiro said as she snapped her fingers. A small area around her instantly froze over as it protected her from the heat. Fine. Ian nodded after seeing Shiro's composed look. Standing behind Shiro, Ian glared at the king and retracted her aura. Now then, shall we have a proper talk without you threatening me? Shiro smiled as she tapped the table and gestured for the king to sit back down. Looking at Ian with caution, he nodded and sat back down. Now then, once again, tell me what you know about the fallen god corpse and the defense nodes. Before that, can you tell me where you got this information? The king asked. This information was supposed to be classified information that very few in the mainland knew about. I heard it from the 3 demons when I killed them. Why didn't you bring this up before then? You were king your wife in bed. Do you want me to ask you about a fallen god? Shiro raised an eyebrow. Fine. What do you want to know? Everything. All right. Where should I start? ####. Leaving the king's study with Ian, Shiro had a small frown on her face. From what the king had told her, the god was supposed to resurrect itself in the future, and they were tasked to protect its corpse. The nodes were part of a bigger formation that, unless one knew of its foundations, would be very hard to break open. But for them to be able to successfully undo the nodes in the other locations meant that someone knew about this formation. Not only that, but they kept the fallen god's corpse a secret because of the greed of man. Should one know of the power that comes with becoming a god, they would stop at nothing to undo the formation so that they could claim the power for themselves. The highest-level adventurers in the continent were supposed to protect the body without desiring the power behind the god, hence why the god had placed seals on all the chosen protectors. They were barred from absorbing the corpse, and unless they were also a god, they couldn't undo this seal. This stopped them from telling others as well, since if someone else had the power to become a god, then that spelt big trouble for them. But the demons had discovered the intel about the corpse and had been sending over waves upon waves of enemies every year in order to claim the corpse for their king. Ice, what a pain. Shiro sighed. If it's a pain, Mum, why not just give up? Ian asked in confusion. Because the reward is good. It's a pain, but if you look at it from another angle, this is also good since it means I'm working towards something. The system wouldn't give me a follow-up quest if I wasn't doing anything, Shiro said as she glanced towards her updated quest. Hidden main quest, Last Stand. After learning of the current situation from the king, you realize that there was little to no chance for the kingdom to survive since they have ingested the demon possession pill. Not only that, but the threat of a high-ranking spy is looming over your head. All of your actions and movements are observed. What will you do? Bonus points are distributed depending on how the quest taker completes the quest. Thinking about the soldiers that were basically ticking time bombs that would set off at any moment, Shiro understood that she had to deal with them sooner or later. Are you thinking about killing the soldiers? Ian asked. Huh? How do you know? Shiro asked in surprise. How long do you think this baby's been with Mum? Not that long. Not the point. But I've been looking at Mum since the start, you know? I know when Mum wants to kill someone. Ian replied. And is that bad? Not really. But if you kill the soldiers, wouldn't that decrease your progress in the quest? The king and little Lise would probably be mad that you killed the soldiers. Ian asked. I know, which is why I'm going to drain every last use out of them. Shiro nodded. You can call her cold, but since they were literally going to die anyways, she was going to make use of them so that she could get a better grade. The next day, Shiro knocked on Lysandra's door early in the morning. Morning teach, what's up? She asked as she rubbed her eyes after finally having some decent sleep in a normal bed. Well, since war is imminent, I want you to help give the soldiers a morale boost. If you help distribute drinks and refreshments to the soldiers, I'm sure that their morale will soar. Shiro smiled lightly. Oh, that makes sense. Lysandra widened her eyes in understanding. Give me a second, she said as she quickly ran back into her room and got changed. Opening the door once more, Lysandra was now in some casual wear as she quickly dragged Shiro to the kitchen and started to get all the maids to prepare the refreshments. Seems like you're quite eager about this, Shiro asked in surprise. Of course. I love this kingdom, you know. If there's a chance to boost the chances of victory so that the citizens are safe, I'll gladly do what I can. Especially since it's just a small task of helping out with the task of distributing. Lysandra smiled brightly as Shiro paused for a moment. Looking at Lysandra, who was so eager to help out, Shiro realized how cruel it would be to have her be the carrier that infected the soldiers. Her initial plan was to have Lysandra being the main contributor so that she could get the most amount of EXP from the soldiers' deaths and reach level 50. I can't let a young girl like her be mentally traumatized like this, she thought to herself. Shaking her head, she decided that she was going to find another way. I'll still have Lysandra being the carrier since it would be easier to get a mark on everyone. I need to make a main controller though so that I can change the nanobots from a distance. Lisa, you go help distribute everything. I'm going to quickly do some research for us to have a better chance of winning the war. Shiro smiled softly and patted her hair. Leaving the kitchen, Shiro kept her eyes forward. If I was ever in trouble, how do you think I would react? If Mum was ever in trouble, I believe that you will find a way to overcome it easily. Good answer. Let Mum show you how I make a new cure to an almost incurable disease, Shiro said with a grin. She was going to show the spy just how terrifyingly adaptive the Snowmancer class was by curing the disease. Returning to her room, Shiro sat down on the chair and started to think about what she was going to do. For all my talk earlier, I really don't have the confidence. I do know that the pill is the demon possession pill, but it should be affecting the conscience along with the body. It might even have something to do with the spirit, I don't know. Shiro thought to herself in seriousness. She was lacking in the understanding of the pills and the effects they cause, so the first thing she needed to do was to conduct some research. Of course, she couldn't just kidnap a soldier and experiment on them, so she had to get someone else. After all, the research that she'll be conducting would most definitely kill the person in order to obtain more information. I should probably get a pill from the king and use it on a death row prisoner or something. I might need more pills though for multiple chances of research. Shaking her head, Shiro made her way back to the king and collected a few pills. Since the king only gave her 5 pills, that means she had 5 chances to find a cure. A little on the short side, but it should be fine, Shiro muttered. I'm sure you can do it, Mom. Een encouraged. Thanks, Een. Shiro smiled and patted Een on the head. Go hang out with Lisa for now and help her hand out the drinks. You can help speed up the spread of the bots, Shiro suggested. Fine, Een replied after a short moment of thought. While she did want to stay with Shiro for longer, she understood that she couldn't help much and that Shiro needed to figure out a way to cure the pill. Watching Een walk away, Shiro started to walk towards the prison cells. The prison had several layers, and the one at the very bottom were those who were fated to die, without any exceptions. Since the king had already given her permission for the prisoners, since she said that she needed some subjects to test out her new magic. Greeting the prison warden, Shiro smiled lightly as she asked him to bring her to the healthiest death row prisoner. Bringing her to the cell, the warden went back to his post. Garrick Drev, convicted of several cases of murder and are *P, Shiro said as she looked at the young man in front of her. To be able to see such a babe before death, what a fortune. He grinned. Tell me, why did you do it? Shiro asked. Why wouldn't I do it? It's not like the kingdom is going to survive anyways. He laughed out. Very well then. Shiro sighed and opened the door to his cell. Oh, you're coming in? Why not have some fun with me? Garrick raised an eyebrow and licked his lips. First of all, you clearly don't need this tongue of yours. Shiro replied coldly as her eyes showed no emotion. Poochie. Oh. Crying out in pain, Garrick widened his eyes as he saw his tongue pinched between Shiro's fingers. You don't need your *CK either. Flexing her fingers, an ice dagger shot towards his crotch and cut it off. Before he could scream, Shiro grabbed his throat and entered the rift. The warden, who had left earlier, heard a scream and quickly made his way back to the cell. Looking at the tongue and pin *S that was left on the floor, he stayed silent and pretended he didn't see anything. The man was going to die anyways. It doesn't matter how he died. With grave new ES. Meanwhile, Shiro brought the man back to her room, creating a small separate testing area from ice so that the actual room wouldn't get bloody. Shiro locked the man down on a makeshift ice table. MNN. The man struggled as much as he could, but Shiro had already sealed his mouth shut. Shoo, don't distract me when I'm experimenting. Shiro narrowed her eyes and smiled slightly. Creating a scanner, she wired it up to the man's body so that she could see everything that was happening. Forcing the pill into his mouth, she made sure he ingested it before looking towards her tablet. Nothing is unusual right now. she muttered as she watched the pill slowly dissolve into his stomach. However, just as the entire pill dissolved itself, Shiro noticed a change occurring inside Garrick's body. "Oh, the cells are being infected by demon cells," Shiro muttered. She noticed how his cells were being empowered and converting into stronger, more powerful demon cells. But so far it's just changing the body to express more power. A body that's closer suited to the demon's physiques. I can't see how the maker of these pills could make the demons possess the humans, Shiro thought in confusion. Making herself a chair to sit on, she looked over at Garrick and saw that he was trying to escape. His body was expanding as he was forcing as much power as he could to break out of the chains. You're speeding up the corruption by forcing out more potential from yourself. Interesting, Shiro muttered in interest. Flexing her fingers, several metal nails materialized over Garrick and stabbed into his limbs, forcing him down on the table. Creating a face mask for herself, Shiro proceeded to make a scalpel and walked next to the table. "Now, Garrick, I don't have any anesthetic on me, so the next part may hurt a little bit, okay? But don't worry, I can definitely guarantee that you won't survive." Shiro chuckled with some mirth in her voice. The first experiment was going to be what happens if she forced the demon cells into a dangerous situation. Would they speed up their corruption progress on the host, or would they just die out? If it was the first option, her task would speed up much more since there's at least a guarantee for a reaction. If not, she would have basically wasted a test subject. Pushii. Tearing into his body, Shiro released several hundred of nanobots inside his body and allowed them to consume their way to the corrupted cells. That way, she'll be able to give the cells a warning to their impending doom and force them to react. Frowning at the lack of reaction, she wondered if it was linked to the kind of fear or mental change the host experienced. Since his sped up their corruption in the search of power, that meant his thought process was definitely linked. Snapping her finger, she put him in an illusion where he was currently fighting for his freedom. While he was winning, it wasn't by a large margin and would encourage him to seek out more power. Looking at the disgusting grin on his face, Shiro had the urge to just end him here and now, but restrained herself. Checking his full body scan, she saw how the chemicals released by his brain was stimulating the demon cells and encouraged them to corrode his body more. Making herself a pair of glasses, Shiro zoomed in onto his flesh and started to carve her way towards the infected area. Her glasses were basically microscopes that allowed her to see what the demon cells were doing. They're kind of like a factory. When he first ingests the pill, a host cell would be created and a link would be formed towards his brain. When he desires power, the host cell would send out scouts to the other cells and convert them over through consumption. It's literally killing him and powering him up at the same time. But why? She thought to herself. It's empowering him and weakening him at the same time, which seemed a little unnecessary. If it had the power to convert him into a mindless demon, surely it wouldn't need to go out of its way to weaken the host, right? Hence the reason why it was confusing Shiro. It was as if the cells were making sure he couldn't fight BAC. Could that be it? Shiro widened her eyes. Bringing up all the information she stored in her database about spirit-type demons, she noticed that they had to possess a dead or unresisting body in order to take over the person without fail. Generally, they would weaken their target and make sure that their spirit is broken before going in for the possession. The cells were doing something similar. They were deliberately preparing the host like he was the ingredients to create the main course. Which means that if I stop them from weakening him, it should reduce the chances of the demon possessing his body. But since the cells are consuming him while producing more flesh in a way, I can't kill the cells. Pausing for a second, Shiro understood that it was probably best to investigate the scout that the main cell would send out before anything. Carving off a small piece of his flesh, she set it aside and started to mend it back together. But instead of using healing magic, she used nanobots to heal him. She was basically converting a part of him into machinery to support his life. For now, making herself a new workstation, Shiro placed the piece of flesh in the center and started to experiment on it. After a few minutes, let her nanobots devour the flesh since the cells died. Since it's demon cells, could my fire of life affect it? She muttered. Carving away more pieces of flesh, Shiro turned back to her workbench and created a small flicker of green fire. Making it so that the fire tried to heal a small portion of the flesh, Shiro noticed how the demon cells started to die out. But, at the same time, the cells released this chemical that started to eat away at the flesh. Seems like when the cells die, they die along with the host. Shiro muttered. This was a little troublesome since it meant that she couldn't just on an arsenic rampage in the army in the name of healing. It would literally kill all the soldiers. Heis, annoying. She muttered whilst massaging her eyes. She could kill the corrupted cells, but that also meant killing the soldiers. If she left it be, it would be giving more soldiers to the traitor. She needed a way for her to put the cells under her control so that they won't kill the human nor weaken them. I can't heal the soldiers either since my skill would kill them. But if I get a normal healer to heal them, it would just give the cells more food. Control. Control. She muttered while leaning back in her chair. Of course, anyone who saw the scene right now would be freaked out since Shiro was relaxing like it was a summer day, winter since Shiro is a snow girl right now. But in the background, Garrick was now screaming once more since Shiro had stopped the illusion. Wait, why can't I do the same? Shiro muttered in realization. Since the cells were already converting the person over, what Shiro needed to do was to infect the demon cells with her nanobots. It was basically doing the Snowmancer class conversion on the soldiers, but not following it all the way through. The end result would be for her to create an army of cybernetic soldiers that were empowered by nanotech. Thinking of this point, Shiro narrowed her eyes slightly, since it was similar to what the scientists did. She was experimenting with the prisoners before exposing more people to the Snowmancer conversation surgery. TSK, this is literally the meaning of the path to hell is paved with good intentions. Shiro clicked her tongue at this hypocrisy. She hated the scientists for what they had done to her, but now she had become the same as them. Shaking her head, Shiro stood up and walked towards Garrick. You know how lucky you are? You're going to be the first person that I attempt to make into a Snowmancer. Well, a quarter of one. Shiro chuckled. Garrick didn't respond since all of his energy had been spent on screaming for the past few minutes. Pinching her fingers together, Shiro focused her mind as she had to make sure she didn't convert him into a full Snowmancer. She only wanted to take over the demon cells and at the same time, make sure that the soldiers would survive. Asterisk TZZZ. Lightning flickered rampantly around her hand as she was constructing the most important item in the surgery. The nanotech core. SSS. Taking a sharp breath in, Shiro flinched as she felt her links strain from creating the core. However, after a short moment, she smiled seeing the item in between her fingers. Nanotech core black. The core required in the surgery to gift a person the SSS class Snowmancer, the living war machine that can create anything and everything they think of. A black grade item, one that was 2 ranks higher than her ataraxia, which was orange grade, and is also the second highest grade of items. Quick reminder of item grades: white, green, blue, purple, orange, red, black, and rainbow. Taking a deep breath, Shiro looked at Garrick before shifting her gaze to his chest. Narrowing her eyes, she plunged the core through his torso and into his heart. Arga! Inserting an ample amount of mana into the core, Shiro watched as the core started to convert Garrick into a pseudo-Snowmancer. Metal tendrils started to wrap around the heart as it slowly spread outwards towards the rest of the body. She needed to be careful about how she controlled this conversion since she had to stop at the 25% mark. Just enough so that his body was no longer under the demon cell's control. Stopping the conversion at roughly 25%, Shiro widened her eyes as she quickly retreated backwards. Gah! Crying out in pain, Garrick could feel his body literally break apart. The nanobots started to turn berserk as Shiro realized that her control over them was slipping. Frowning in annoyance, she summoned her swords and dashed towards the struggling Garrick. Slashing a few times with her swords, she killed him before the nanobots turned him into something else entirely. Seems like I'm lacking something to increase the success rate of the conversion. Shiro muttered, seeing the dead corpse that was still pulsing a little. Sending over a strand of nanobots, she let them consume the body entirely before going back to the prison for more death row prisoners. On her way there, she was contemplating about what had gone wrong. When activating the core inside the host, it would slowly convert their body into that of a Snowmancer's. If the compatibility is low, the host will die. But since the core I created is a child core of my own, It wouldn't be as powerful as my own, thus meaning the success is definitely high. Failing like that is definitely abnormal. How did the scientists do it? Shiro thought in confusion. Back then, she understood that she was the first successful test subject and was also the most powerful. But this meant that future corrections were also based off of her data, meaning everything after her was just mass-produced frauds that couldn't compare to her. While the description of the item said that it created the SSS rank class, it was still much weaker than what a normal triple S rank class would be. If she had to give it a grade herself, it would be SS++. Something more powerful than double S, but not good enough to be classed as triple S. Since they could mass produce from my data, why can't I convert him over? Shaking her head, she grabbed another death row prisoner and made her way back to her room. Repeating the experiment once more, Shiro made sure that she examined the prisoner carefully for any changes that may occur during the operation. However, even after moving on to the third prisoner, Shiro couldn't see what went wrong. Gritting her teeth in frustration, she sat on her chair and glared at the empty space. Why isn't it working? My calculations aren't wrong. The procedure is also correct since King experienced it myself. I know what they do to create more copies, so what am I lacking? She muttered. Shaking her head, she decided to review what she had learned so far. During the conversion surgery, the core is planted, following which, she would embed it with mana and encourage it to convert the host into a nanomancer before stopping at 25% conversion. But it was at this point that the nanobots would suddenly go berserk. Could it be that it cannot stop at 25%? Theoretically, the surgery could be stopped midway due to the fact that she could limit the amount of nanobots that are created inside the body. But the reality proved different since the moment she did that. The nanobots revolted in a way and would start to convert the host into something else entirely in order to preserve themselves in a way. Maybe because the main objective was to completely transform the host? Since the nanobots are created for the sole purpose by the core during the surgery, stopping it would be denying them of their purpose in life if one was to look at it from another angle. Then what if the sole purpose was to just protect the host from demon cells? Rather than giving them the main goal of converting them into a nanomancer at the start, then stopping that process midway, I can make it so that it would only turn them into mechanized soldiers. She thought to herself as she started to test her hypothesis out. Grabbing the fourth death row prisoner, she fed him the demon pill before creating a new nanotech core. Rewriting the purpose of the core, Shiro smiled, seeing some decent progress. Weaken nanotech core, red. A core that is used to create the S-ranked class, nanotech gunman. Nanotech gunman. She muttered in interest. She didn't know that this class even existed. Plus, the only classes that were related to nanotech was her nanomancer class, the branch classes that the scientists made after her in the nanotech war machine. She doesn't remember running into a nanotech gunman back in her old life, so there was a big chance that this was a branch class that she created herself. However, that didn't matter since the most important matter was still to see if the conversion surgery is successful. Implanting the weakened nanotech core, Shiro sat back and observed the changes to the prisoner's body. The reaction wasn't as explosive as the previous experiments, and the nanobots were quite tame in taking over the body. They only lashed a small part of themselves to each cell, including the demon cells, and continued to spread all over the body. If she had to describe it, it would be like a parasite. She was the controller of the parasites that would take over the host's body and prevent the demon from weakening it. This also prevented the demon from possession since it wasn't able to replace the original host of the body. While her original goal was only to heal the soldiers to stop them from being taken over, she had actually stumbled into a way to fully convert the whole army into S-ranked class war machines. As the nanobots spread all over his body, Shiro waited patiently for his class to change. Tarim LVL 37, Nanotech Gunman. Smiling at the success, she also discovered a hidden perk. She had an innate connection to his nanobots. Not only that, she could give him orders that he would follow. Flexing her fingers slightly, she saw a layer of nanotech armor form around the prisoner. The suit itself was that of a matte black with neon blue highlights. In addition to this, there were coils on the back that would gather the ambient mana to help power the suit. And the best part is that she wasn't strained at all. She was the one giving the command, and not the one executing the command, meaning that her broken mana links wouldn't be a problem if they're not the one to make the weapon. Grinning slightly, Shiro uploaded the blueprint of the sniper into the soldier's mind and had him create it. Lightning and metal sparked a little as a simplified version of her sniper appeared in the man's hands. Not bad. Shiro smiled in satisfaction. Since this man was a successful experiment, she wasn't going to kill him, but instead make the most out of him. Walking towards the window, Shiro looked around and saw Lysandra distributing the drinks in the distance. Since she had already made her into the carrier, nanobots were currently infecting everyone in the army. The next stage would naturally be to convert them into nanotech soldiers, but she had to do that manually unless she was able to have the nanobots inside each soldier convert themselves into weakened nanotech cores. Looking at the newly transformed Tarim, Shiro smiled ambiguously before flickering away from her spot. Of course, she made sure that Tarim couldn't run away since he's a valuable resource after all. Returning with the fifth and final prisoner, she fed him the pill before converting him. She wanted to make sure that it was safe in case anything goes wrong. With 2 nanotech gunmen by her side, she was going to let them be her controllers. Placing her hand on their heads, she sent shocks through their brain to make them brain dead. Linking up both the nanobot network, Shiro set it up so that they would be the first batteries. Once everything was prepared, she closed her eyes and linked her connection to the nanobots that Lysandra had infected everyone with and redirected their link to the 2 batteries in her hands. She set down instructions for the nanobots inside both of their bodies and watched as they slowly converted each of the soldiers' nanobots into a highly weakened nanotech core. This was due to the fact that they were technically the source now, which meant the classes they make were inferior to them. Of course, she made sure that the core didn't convert them just yet since she was going to keep it a surprise for the spy. Sure, she may not have the power she had hoped to get from the army. However, it was better than straining herself for a huge army. Plus, she wasn't going to get through them all in time. She was just going to focus her attention on the high-level soldiers and make them into generals of sorts where their combat power would be much bigger than the average soldier. Setting up a few devices on the 2 batteries' bodies to make sure that they didn't run out of mana while converting the army, all Shiro had to do now was to plant the core in the high-level soldiers herself to ensure that their combat potential improved. Making her way over to the training area, she started to wonder about the time she had left in this quest. So far, I've been here for almost a month, which is around 30 hours in the outside world. The recruitment demonstration was set to be a week from before, so I still have a little more than 5 days outside, which is around 4 months or so in this place. But that's the upper limit, so I'd say around 3 months is a safe bet. She thought to herself. Depending on what happened, 3 months should be more than enough time for her to class up. But that was only if she got lucky with the items. But, seeing as though there were items that she couldn't get from this place, that was very unlikely. Well, if a reward like the wish bag is given as the lowest tier reward, surely I'll be able to get it inside the dungeon as well, right? She muttered to herself. Dismissing that thought for now, Shiro arrived at the main camp. Miss Shiro, what brings you here? One of the generals asked. He was level 47 and was by far one of the higher level people she's seen in the kingdom. Can you bring me all of the people who are higher than level 40 and have the rank of commander or higher? Shiro asked with a smile. Of course, but is there any particular reason to this? Think of it this way. What I'm going to do may seem like nothing, but it will play a big part in the war to come. I can't tell you what it is since the effects would be diminished. Shiro replied. Understood. The general replied. Not too long after, he returned with all of the commander rank and above soldiers waiting outside of the tent. Looking at their numbers, Shiro couldn't help but feel the corner of her mouth twitch a little. F***CKme. Even if you give me a week, I don't think I can go through all of these people. She thought to herself. Quickly making a mental note in her mind, Shiro decided to make all the generals have cores that would convert around 30% of their body. This will allow them to then give the captains weakened cores that will only convert around 25%, and then the commanders will have the highly weakened core, which will only convert 15 to 20% of their body. This way, she would only need to focus on the few generals that were in front of her and didn't need to worry about straining her links too much. Generals stand to one side with captains behind them and commanders behind the captains. Shiro instructed as they did as they were told. Walking up to the first general, Shiro placed a palm on his chest and sent mana into his body. Don't resist. Allow the mana to flow through you, she said while planting the seed that would become the core once the time is right. Now I want you to store a little bit of your mana into the captains' bodies. As for the captains, once the generals store a bit of their mana into you, you will then store some into the commanders, she called out while moving on to the next general. Nodding at her instructions, they did as they were told. After all, the king did pass down an order saying that they should follow the royal tutor's instructions where possible. Repeating the process with the other generals, she then had some small chat with them before leaving. Now that the seeds are sown, the moment the generals are converted, the captains will follow right behind them along with the commanders, she muttered in satisfaction. All that was left for her to do was for her to wait. For the next few days, Shiro would occasionally train with Lysandra in terms of just basic sparring and improving on techniques. In would just eat her mana stones while watching. Of course, since she was eating the stones, Shiro was slightly concerned about her stock decreasing rapidly. She had to sneak out every night in order to hunt some monsters for food so that she didn't starve herself. Naturally, she had also asked the king about giving her some C-ranked mana stones, but the sheer amount that she requested made the king want to flip a table. Who the hell needs 1,000 C-ranked mana stones? Even if your bird is a glutton, she wouldn't eat that much, okay? In the end, they settled with the king getting as many as he could. Heist, so bored, she muttered whilst watching the two batteries still working on converting the army. Converting an army wasn't something that could be done quickly, so Shiro could only wait patiently. Asterisk knock knock knock. Opening the door, Shiro saw a maid with a small smile. Miss Shiro, the king has sent a message. Your requested items have arrived, she said with a smile. Thank you. My pleasure. Watching the maid leave, Shiro turned to Een. Een, the king's got my stuff. Let's go, she called out. Oh, is Mum gonna heal herself now? Een asked with excitement. Perhaps. It depends on if the pill works or not, Shiro replied as she hid her excitement and showed a composed expression. But Een wasn't fooled. It's just me and you, Mom. If you're excited, you should show it. Een rolled her eyes. Fine, fine. Come, let's go. Shiro grinned like a child with a piece of candy. See, I knew it. Een laughed as she jumped on Shiro's back. Making their way to the king's room, Shiro knocked on the door and waited for his response. Come in. Opening the door, Shiro saw the king sitting in his chair while looking through documents. I heard that my stuff is here. Shiro smiled. Yeah, it's in here. The king nodded and placed a bracelet on the table. Thanks. You need me for anything else? If not, I'll be going now, Shiro said as she couldn't wait to get a start on repairing her mana links. After all, they had been plaguing her for quite some time now. With ring above new. Actually, I do, the king said, placing down his pen. Go on. During the battle, if things start to look bad, I want you to take Lysandra and leave this place. Don't even bother about the mainland since that will be overrun sooner or later. I just wish that you're able to protect her for as long as possible, the king asked. Sure. Shiro nodded her head since that was her plan to begin with. If Lysandra was really the only hope, then she'll make sure that she stays alive. Wait, is that it? The king widened his eyes after hearing her reply. What? You wanted more? You asked me to keep Lysandra safe, and I said yes. What else is there for me to say? Shiro replied with a raised eyebrow. Maybe reassure me? Say, oh, don't worry, the war will be won or something. The king shrugged. PFT, please. I'm not your wife. If you want reassurance, ask her when you *CK in the morning or something. Shiro rolled her eyes. Ice, why do I even bother? I should have known what you're by now. The king shook his head with a small smile. But I suppose some encouragement is needed. Just focus on doing what you can, and I'll do the same. Shiro smiled before leaving the room. Looking at where Shiro had stood a moment ago, the king sighed before picking up his pen again. However, he now had a small smile on his face since he felt like destiny was about to change. Even though he did say that Lysandra was their last hope, he felt more secure with Shiro's promise. Strange, he mused to himself before focusing on the work on his desk. Meanwhile, Shiro had already made it back to her room and looked at what was stored inside the bracelet. There was a single pill along with what seemed to be 150 C-class mana stones. Weakened Heavenly Rebirth Pill, purple. Due to the influence of the fallen god's corpse, heavenly power was spread through the land. This pill will repair one's body from its very foundations. Effectiveness 3%. Darling, would you mind standing guard for a little while? Shiro asked with a smile. I would have done that even if you didn't say it, Mom. Smiled. Sitting down in the middle of her room, Shiro set up a few defenses just in case. Naturally, she also hid the 2 human batteries since it would be annoying if other people found out after all. Taking a deep breath, she looked at the pill in her hands. Once she ate this, she would repair her body by 3%. Throwing the pill in her mouth, Shiro swallowed and felt a fire rage inside of her. Boom. A burst of wind exploded out with her in the center. Gritting her teeth, Shiro could feel her mana running rampant within her body. Motes of light started to appear around her, while a faint golden aura slowly enveloped her. From her chest, an orb of dark mana flared up and clashed with the golden aura, causing her to flinch from the pain. SSSS. Taking a sharp breath of air from the pain, Shiro closed her eyes to concentrate. While her pain tolerance was indeed impressive, she had to admit that she severely underestimated the pain that came with the rebirth pill. Every breath she took was akin to breathing in a batch of nails that scraped against her throat. Small movements would send a shock through her body, while the gentle wind became swords that cut across her skin. Why the F***ck are you fighting against the pill? Shiro cursed out in her mind. She could feel her own mana attempting to stop the foreign mana from doing anything within her body. Reaching out with her palm, she created a magic circle and slammed it against her cheek. Gah! Crying out in pain, she forcefully suppressed her own mana from basically wasting this rebirth pill. Without the intrusion of her dark mana, the golden aura wrapped around her once more and started to seep into her body. Furrowing her brows, Shiro sent her consciousness into her mana realm and saw several tendrils of light that started to thread her mana links together. Overwhelmed with joy, she inadvertently let down her guard. However, she soon realized the mistake due to the bone-crunching pain that amplified through her body. F***ck. She cursed out before feeling her consciousness fluctuate. Flexing her fingers, she encased herself in ice to prevent the golden aura from being wasted. This way, even if she falls unconscious, she'll get the most out of the pill. Just as she encased herself in ice, her body forced her into an unconscious state due to the pain. Watched with worry plastered on her face since she couldn't do anything but spectate the process. Unbeknown to the both of them, the golden aura didn't refine her body, but rather, it started to merge with the ice. A galaxy seemed to have formed within the ice before scattering apart. While Shiro was unconscious inside the ice, another 3 days had passed outside. Tension was at an all-time high due to the demon army coming closer every second. The scouts that they sent out had mostly died, and the few that returned didn't have any substantial information. The king sat on his chair as he looked out the window in fatigue. Having done all he could, the only thing left was to wait. What else can I do? He muttered. Thinking about a particular snow girl that was currently entrapped in her ice coffin like an eternal fairy, the king couldn't help but shake his head. However, he couldn't see the small motes of light floating past the window. They were converging towards Shiro's room. Lysandra, who was in her room at this time, perked up in surprise and shock. She could feel a frightening amount of mana gathering towards Shiro. Quickly charging out of her room, she ran towards where Shiro was. Bang. Kicking open the door, she saw trying to swat the lights away as if they were flies. Get away from Mom, she shouted out while flapping her arms around. What's happening? Lysandra asked in worry. I don't know. These little pieces of *T just appeared and started to surround Mom. Replied in annoyance. While others saw motes of light, could see tiny fairies that snickered at her while flying around Shiro. Tilting her head in confusion, Lysandra didn't understand why addressed the motes of light as if they were living beings. However, she felt a familiar warmth with the light. Strange, she thought while reaching out towards one of the motes. She saw it move back and forth as if it didn't know where to go. Retracting her hand, Lysandra turned towards Shiro. Small fractures could be seen slowly spreading over the surface of the ice as she realized that this meant that Shiro was about to wake up from her sleep. Asterisk KRRR. Crack. More fractures appeared as the motes became jubilant. They gathered towards Shiro with more vigor than before, while Een continued to try her best at swatting them out of the sky. Asterisk boom. Da. Een cried out in shock as a gust of wind smacked her on the back and sent her flying towards the wall. Lysandra wasn't spared either, since she too was hit in the face by a heavy gust of wind. Pho. Well, isn't this refreshing? A melodic voice chuckled. Teach. Mom. Sup. Shiro grinned since she felt her entire body full of energy. Dusting the ice shards off her body, she looked at the motes of light floating around in the air with interest. She felt like she could connect with them, but at the same time, that connection seemed to be blocked by a veil, thin yet impenetrable. Dancing around for a small while, the lights started to fade away as if they were never here. Mom, what took you so long? Een pouted as she pounced on Shiro. During the time that she was sleeping, Een felt incredibly bored. So the fact that Shiro was back gave her a sense of relief. Sorry, I was busy upgrading my attunement. Right now, all of my elements have reached Tier 3. Shiro grinned. The reality was that she had finished repairing her body during the first day, but had taken the time to upgrade her attunements as well. Her first target was naturally glacial, since that was her main element as of this moment. But after that was upgraded, she noticed how there weren't any strange movements within the kingdom and proceeded to upgrade her other elements. How's the situation so far, Lisa? Shiro asked, turning to Lysandra. Nothing's happened just yet. If anything, the army's just a little tense. Lysandra smiled. Amen. That's pretty good then. Honestly, I didn't think they'd wait this long. It has been almost a week since the fortress appeared after all. Shiro replied with a small nod. Since that's the case, why don't we take the initiative? She asked with a grin. What do you mean? We start the war instead of waiting for them to invade. Carrying Een on her back with Lysandra following behind her, Shiro made her way to the throne room. Say, Mum, you said that your attunements reached Tier 3, right? Does that mean you have the true elemental armor now rather than the fake one? Een asked with curiosity. Yup. Shiro nodded. Can you show me? Een asked as her eyes brightened with excitement. Lysandra was the same, since she was curious about Shiro's elemental armor. Nope. Shiro grinned. Even if your darling baby asks you. Een frowned as she tried to pull the puppy eyes at Shiro. Gently flicking Een on the head, Shiro laughed lightly. You're a bird. Why are you trying to be a puppy? Che. Be patient. I'll show you during the war. Though I think you'll be too preoccupied with something else to be focusing on me. Shiro chuckled. While Een did know that she was creating soldiers, she didn't know that she was converting the entire army into her soldiers. Arriving at the king's study room, Shiro could feel that the king was alone and knocked on the door. Come in. Damn, the 3 days seemed to be rough on him. Shiro thought after hearing the fatigue in his voice. Entering the room, Shiro waved her hand lightly. Sup, how's the war effort coming along? Fine. What about you? You were in your room for 3 days. The king chuckled. Had a small upgrade thanks to the pill you gave me. But damn, is it me or have you been more active in the morning? You look drained. Shiro grinned. Oi, what the hell are you saying? He widened his eyes as he looked over at Lysandra. Seeing Lysandra with a puzzled face, he sighed in relief. Haha, but all jokes aside, let's help you out, shall we? What do you mean? Since the demons haven't invaded yet, why don't we abuse them as much as we can and reduce their fighting potential? Shiro suggested with a dark look in her eyes. I'm listening. Standing on Yin's back, Shiro glanced behind her and smiled at the small battalion that she was given. They were riding on their own mounts, but naturally, they couldn't compare to Een. Their average level was 45, and their main task was to destroy as many of the demons' camps as they can. If they see forts, they'll do a quick aerial bombardment before retreating. Naturally, Lysandra was back at home since there wasn't much she could do in their situation. She was primarily a close-ranged fighter, while everyone in this battalion, apart from Shiro, was a long-range fighter. Approaching the first camp, Shiro narrowed her eyes. Ready your spells. Shiro shouted out as rhythmic chanting could be heard from behind her. Swoop towards their camp, please. Shiro asked with a small smile while patting the side of Yin's head. Asterisk key. Flapping her wings, Een dived towards the demon's camp. Shiro crouched down and readied her own spell as she watched the camp come closer and closer. While there was still some difficulty with creating a Tier 3 magic circle, she could definitely feel the difference between completely broken mana links and having some healed. Fire, she shouted out as she too activated her spell. Asterisk, boom. A giant snowstorm erupted out from the middle of the demon camp. With a single gesture of her hand, Shiro turned all of the snowflakes into deadly razors that cut anything and everything it touched. Her battalion wasn't idle either, since they too sent their spells flying toward the demon camp. Within a few short moments, the once lively camp was instantly razed to the ground. Stop! Let's move on to the next camp, Shiro shouted out. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Asterisk bang. What the hell is happening? A demon shouted out while slamming his hand into the desk. They were ready to start the war, but due to orders from the higher-ups, they had to wait patiently. But this patience only rewarded them with more casualties. Sit back down and be patient. The deaths are within the general's plans, another demon said, giving him a side glance. We're literally on their doorstep and can't do sh*t. Plus, I've heard that the humans have a powerful mage on their side. Her name is Shiro, and she's primarily an ice mage. He gritted his teeth and sat down heavily. It's only one mage. She can't do anything. I wish. She also has a pet who is part of the Phoenix race. Can you see the problem? The second demon could only narrow his eyes, since it was indeed a worry. Reporting. A demon shouted out as he barged into the room. Speak. Camp gone. Hui and Desk have gone silent. He reported as he kneeled down. Sweat dripped off his face, since all three camps were quite close to the place. Since the enemy was able to take care of them easily, that could only mean that their combat power is outrageous. Impossible, the first demon cried out in shock. Even if she was able to take care of one of the camps, he should have gotten the news much sooner. Do you have visual on her? The second demon asked with a serious face. And no, we don't. However, just as the demon was about to ask another question, he suddenly paled after feeling a sharp, killing intent lock onto him. His instincts ran wild as he wrapped his arms around his head and put up as many defenses as he could. Asterisk, boom. Ping. Widening his eyes, he watched as the ray of light smashed through his defenses with ease. He could clearly feel the mana being ripped from his spell. There were no explosions or the such, just a clean line that evaporated everything that it touched. Asterisk cough. Throwing up a mouthful of blood, the demon kneeled down heavily as he looked towards where the shot originated from. How? He muttered in disbelief when all he saw was a tiny speck in the distance. Even with his incredible eyesight, he couldn't see the face of his assailant. As for the other demon, he quickly used all of his berserk skills and flew into the air. Since the enemy could kill the other general in a single shot, he knew they could do the same to him. TSK, TSK, TSK. How cowardly. A voice chuckled behind him. Quickly turning around, he came face to face with Een, who grabbed him by the throat. Her dark, purple wings flapped gently behind her as her hair fluttered in the wind. Looking at Een, the only thing that came to the demon's mind was deathly beauty. Since Mum's had her fun with your friend, it's my turn to have some fun, she said with a smile. Naturally, the demon tried to struggle out of her grasp, but could only look in horror as he noticed how her grip didn't budge at all. Reaching out with her finger, Een drew a vertical line down his face. Bye-bye, she grinned before snapping her fingers. Asterisk, boom. A blade of dark star energy erupted from the line. She drew and cut the demon in half without any resistance. However, even after the spell killed its target, it didn't stop. Cutting across the fort as collateral, Een stuck her tongue out playfully while watching the fort get cut in half. Whoops, she chuckled. Een, what did I say about collateral damage? Shiro's weary voice was heard over the crystal. Sorry, Mum, but the goal was to destroy the fort anyways, so this is fine. Een laughed playfully. Fine, but watch out. I'm going to try a little something. Shiro chuckled. Hi, I'm coming back now. Jumping into the rift, Een appeared beside Shiro and saw that she was currently aiming her sniper rifle into the sky. What are you planning, Mum? She asked curiously. A meteor bombardment of sorts. Shiro replied while keeping an eye on the damage multiplier. Lightning started to flicker off the sniper as the ambient mana in the surroundings were being absorbed without restraint. Asterisk Kish. Some of the coils started to smoke due to the sheer amount of mana being stored inside the sniper. MN, better than before, but still a little lacking. Shiro muttered in slight disappointment. Narrowing her eyes, she pulled the trigger. Asterisk Bang. The force of the shot caused the barrel to shatter apart and the ground beneath her to crack and fracture. A flaming bullet cut across the sky as the demons that had survived the initial attack by Een looked up in fear. As beings that were sensitive towards mana, they knew that whatever was flying through the air would kill them without doubt. Asterisk Boom Crack. Exploding into a giant ball of plasma just above the fort, lightning and fire rained down upon the fort as it easily demolished the buildings without restraint. Since the average level of the demons inside the fort was 50, they died without question to the calamity that had just detonated above them. As for the few miraculous survivors, their miracle didn't last long since the calamity wasn't over. If they survived one wave, then the second wave will kill them. If they survived that, a third wave followed shortly. As long as the ball of plasma was still in the air, the waves of fire and lightning continued to ravage the fort. Of course, it couldn't last forever. Every wave that shot out would decrease the size of the plasma ball, but it was more than enough to decimate everything that breathed. What a sight! Shiro smiled. Not to burst your bubble, Mom, but didn't you just educate me about using too much mana a while back? How much mana did you use with that bullet? Een asked with a *tea-eating grin. *cough *Een darling. Let Mom have this moment, okay? Shiro coughed lightly in embarrassment. Nope. There should be a certain amount of truth between us, okay? Een shook her head. Looking away, Shiro didn't want to reveal that she used over 50% of her mana with a single shot. Plus, that wasn't including the shot she used to kill the first demon general. For a single shot to take more than 600 kmp was extravagant no matter how you wanted to look at it. Here, eat this, and let's go collect some loot. Shiro quickly changed the topic and handed Een a C-ranked mana stone. TSK. How could you try to bribe your own daughter like this? Een shook her head disapprovingly. Unfortunately for Een, it would be more convincing if she didn't take the stone without a shred of hesitation. Che, little glutton. Shiro rolled her eyes as she flicked Een on the head. Phew. Een cried out, feeling the flick. Don't hit this baby's head. I've already lost enough IQ because of you last time, Mom. She pouted. Why does this daughter of mine think that just flicking her head will decrease her IQ? Shiro thought to herself as she looked at Een like a disappointed mother. The look was similar to that of a mother after her child came back with a test score of 1, even though the max was 100 and had the excuse that it was better than 0. It's still 1 out of 100, okay? Dismissing the thoughts out of her mind, they made their way to the fort. Collecting the loot that mostly consisted of level 50 armor, mana stones, and demon materials, Shiro checked up with the battalion that she had ordered to attack the surrounding camps. Reporting, we've destroyed 6 camps so far. We saw reinforcement from another fort, so we pulled back as you've ordered. One of the captains reported. I see, good job. We'll reorganize ourselves at Point B. Shiro replied over the crystal. She had 2 sets of crystals. One so that she could talk with Een if they were too far away, and the other was to keep her linked with the rest of the battalion. She didn't want them to find out about her nanotech just yet after all. The spy could be listening. Shall we go? Shiro smiled. Sure. Een smiled blissfully while eating her mana stone lollipops. She had one in her mouth and another in her hand. ###. After regrouping, they continued to harass the demons through the night. Their casualties were minimal, but the same couldn't be said for their enemies. Losing a total of 5 forts, 34 camps, and several high-level members, the demons had taken a severe blow to their forces in a single night. While the night was fruitful, Shiro was slightly confused. They seemed ready to attack at any moment, but why were they still waiting at their camp? She thought to herself. Logically, the war should have started a while ago, but they were still in their preparation phase. An anomaly like this couldn't be ignored. They're not dumb enough to not attack, so the chances of this being a part of their plan is quite big. But then this changes everything. Why do they want us to attack? What do they have to gain from the destruction of their camps and forts? How does delaying the war give them any benefits? Shiro questioned. Arriving back at the kingdom, the king called for a war council after receiving news about the damage they caused to the demon army. The main topic for discussion is why they haven't invaded yet. As the generals discussed the problem, Shiro sat near the window with Ian. Looking at the night sky with narrowed eyes, she wondered about the possible outcomes of the following war. From what she had simulated, there was an 82% of victory, but it is decreased to 39% if she factored in the unknown. Nanotech gunmen were indeed powerful, but if the hidden agenda of the demon race were worse than she had expected, the nanotech gunmen would have been created for naught. It was better to prepare some backup plans, just in case. But what else could she do? She's already delayed the war, converted an army, and even repaired her body slightly. The threat of a Tier 6 Demon King was also there since it was like a guillotine that could end her at any moment. We can't be too passive nor aggressive. Shiro muttered in annoyance. A stalemate. You know, Mom, if this is annoying you, you can just end this quest right now. Ian suggested. Ice, I've already invested too much into this. If I don't get anything in return, I'm literally going to kill someone in the worst way possible. Shiro replied with a frown. Rayleigh incoherent chanting. Please don't be me. Please don't be me. Please don't be me. So kind of like me? Ian joked in an attempt to lighten Shiro up a little. Pretty much. I've already spent too much time on you. Shiro laughed and flicked Ian on the head once more. Gah? I've already told you to stop flicking my head. Ian cried out. And I've already told you to stop eating my stock. Isn't this like the 18th C-class mana stone that you've eaten? Should we do a trade? I'll stop flicking and you stop eating. Mom, this baby's forehead is very tender and soothing. One can get great joy from flicking it. Feel free to flick it as much as you want. Haha, glutton. Shiro laughed and patted Ian on the head. She just hoped that the demon army would attack soon so that she could get rid of this stalemate. After the war council meeting was adjourned, Shiro immediately made her way to the roof of the highest tower and sat there with Ian. Since they had some free time, Shiro wanted to go out of her way to make some extra defenses. *TZZ. Lightning flickered around her as she started to install a series of weapon cores onto the tower. What are you making, Mom? A degraded version of the orbital cannon. Normally, I would have something to launch a core into the atmosphere that would expand into a satellite cannon before creating the pointer. But since I don't have the power to create the satellite yet, I'm going to manually become the pointer while this will become the long-distance cannon. Shiro explained. Once she converts the king's castle into a heavily fortified nanotech fortress, she could be more assured about the outcome of the war. Spending the night to convert several towers, she saved a few towers to create a defense system for the cannons. Naturally, the king didn't know any of this. No one could sense the spy could be around every corner. She needed to be secretive about this. Just as she was finished with the final defense, she saw the sky slowly brighten up. It's already morning? Shiro muttered, clearly not expecting it to be sunrise this early. Even though she had been working on the defenses for a while, there should still be 2 hours left. However, it wasn't a sunrise. Widening her eyes in shock, she saw a giant wave of lightning arrows rushing towards the kingdom. Everyone wake the F***CK up. We're under attack. Shiro shouted out as she used mana to amplify her voice so that everyone could hear it. Slamming her palms into the roof, Shiro pumped as much mana as she could into the defense systems. She didn't have the time she needed to draw mana from the surroundings, so she could only fuel it with her own mana for now. Resisting the pain she was feeling from her body, she continued to insert an outrageous amount of mana. Ian, take this and point out where the enemy is located. Shiro shouted out while flicking a small device at Ian. How do I use this? Ian asked with a serious face. When you see them, throw it at them. Remember, once you throw it, jump into the rift since I don't want to hit you by accident. Got it. Quickly transforming herself back to a phoenix, Ian flew away. Kish. 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 While Ian was flying away, several mechanical structures started to extend from the towers and projected a huge barrier over the entire kingdom. Boom. The impact of the attack against the barrier caused a miniature earthquake to hit the kingdom. Those who were still sleeping woke up instantly. Crack. Crack. Several fractures could be seen spreading on the surface of the barrier as Shiro twisted her palm. Following her gesture, the barrier started to rotate, throwing several arrows to the landscape around the kingdom. Asterisk, boom, boom, boom. Every arrow that hit the ground would cause a huge explosion that decimated everything within the blast radius. Looking at the damage, Shiro frowned a little after thinking about the casualties that they could have taken. Looking down, she could see the soldiers scrambling around in a panic. Oh, for F***'s sake, she muttered with a roll of her eyes. Creating a magic circle, she combined it with the defense system. Asterisk, boom. Shrinking down for a moment, the barrier expanded in an instant and sent the rest of the arrows flying towards the surroundings. Naturally, this forced the barrier to lose quite a bit of durability and a portion of it shattered apart. At least the absorption system seems to be working optimally. She sighed in relief. If the attack had landed on her barrier without the absorption system, it would have shattered upon impact. But due to the fact that the barrier siphoned mana from the surroundings along with the mana from the attack, it was barely able to hold itself together. Watching the barrier slowly stitch itself back together, Shiro quickly encased herself in ice to regain some of her mana. Now that the initial attack had been blocked, it gave the defense system some time to fully fuel itself rather than Shiro supplying the mana herself. Feeling a small rumble in her hands, Shiro saw the coordinates that Een had given her. Perfect. She grinned as her eyes became cold. Redirecting a portion of the mana to the weapon systems, several huge cannons materialized above the towers as support beams stabbed into the ground. If one was to look at the castle now, they would see huge cannons aiming high into the sky. Asterisk TZZZ. Lightning thrashed around the barrel as a huge amount of ambient mana was being pulled from the surroundings. Asterisk bang, bang, bang. Naturally, as collateral, some parts of the castle were shattered by the lightning, but no one was harmed. Neon circuits could be seen slowly running its way up the barrel, as if symbolized how much power is being charged up. Raising her hand up, Shiro narrowed her eyes and clutched her fist. Asterisk kish kish kish. 3 layered magic circles wrapped around the tip of the barrel. Asterisk bang. A single beam of light cut across the sky as the support beams cracked under the pressure. Asterisk boom. Splitting the clouds in half, the beam dyed the sky with an ominous red. A distant explosion and echo signaled the destruction of the attackers. Asterisk boom. A heavy gust of wind shortly followed the explosion as Shiro quickly stabilized herself as to not get blown away by the wind. Smiling in satisfaction, Shiro looked back at the cannons. The castle towers were heavily damaged due to the force of the recoil, even with the support beam's help. However, their job was complete since they were supposed to help her with long-ranged units. Making sure that the defenses were back up, Shiro hopped down from the tower and ran towards the council room once more. "I'm back," Een called out as she jumped out of the rift. "Amen, good job. Follow me. We're going to talk to the king about the next moves." Shiro smiled before flicking a C-ranked mana stone at Een. Catching the stone in her mouth, Een smiled happily and followed after Shiro. Asterisk bang. Pushing open the door, Shiro saw the generals standing around the table with a serious face. "Situation?" the king asked. "Everyone's safe for now. The defenses I've installed on the castle managed to hold up. As for the enemy, they've been taken care of." Shiro chuckled. "Amen, seems like we should attack now. Gather the soldiers, and we'll take them on at the borders," the king ordered as Shiro paused in a second. "Wait, is that it?" she asked with a raised eyebrow. With all that discussion they had previously, she had expected them to have a better battle plan. However, from what she could tell right now, the plan was just to group up and smash their army into the demon's army. Yes, why? Okay, listen up. First, facing against them in a head-on collision is a king stupid idea. Right now, we're outnumbered heavily as well as outleveled. Plus, the spy hasn't been found yet. Therefore, I say hand me the full command of the army. I'll take over and command them from a higher vantage point. We need to use brains rather than brawn," Shiro said in all seriousness. "Miss Shiro, as much as we trust you, I don't think you'll be able to pull it off. We've managed to push the demons back through sheer will and tenacity, so I'm sure the strong men of this kingdom can pull it off again." "You idiot. Did you not just see Mum protect your asses right now? If she didn't put up the barrier, you wouldn't even have a kingdom left." Een rolled her eyes. The general shut up instantly since he had a point. However, as a man, he believed in dying in the glory of battle. Hiding and fighting the enemy in a cowardly way was against how he lived his life. Amen, just listen up. Follow my commands, and I'll lead you through this battle. Of course you can ignore me, but that will have a different kind of consequence. Shiro smiled darkly since she had the choice of completely turning them into her pawns without a shred of conscience. Very well. I do hope that you can pull this off. The king nodded his head. However, allow me to prepare for battle as well. I shall join in. He continued. My king, you cannot. You're currently injured and the kingdom still needs you. The generals widened their eyes and kneeled down all at once. Che, if the king wants to join, let him join. He's one of the most powerful ones here and you want him to stay back. Shiro rolled her eyes. Asterisk cough, asterisk, you really think differently, don't you? I don't even know if you think of me as a king. He chuckled in embarrassment. PFT, if they saw what you were up to in the morning, I think they might have the same thought process. Since you have the vigor for a morning routine, I'm sure you have the vigor for a battle. Shiro replied with a shrug. Can you stop mentioning that? The king's face reddened up slightly as he quickly left the room to prepare himself. Anyways, gather up your soldiers and meet me at the gates. Shiro ordered. Leaving no room for discussion, she started to make her way towards Lysandra's room, with Een following just behind her. What are you planning to do for the war, Mom? Een asked curiously. Just a little guerrilla tactics and trickery. Shiro replied after a short moment of thought. She needed to prepare a backup plan for the guerrilla tactics since the problem of the spy knowing everything is a big one. Not only that, but the fact that she still didn't know who the spy was gave her headache. She had her ideas, but the moment she takes the initiative without solid evidence, her rating for the quest was going to decrease quite substantially. Teach, has the war started? Lysandra called out from the distance. She was dressed in combat armor, clearly ready for a fight at any moment, and the Imperium sword hung on her waist. Yes, it has. Follow me. We're going to meet the main army at the gates. Shiro nodded as she pulled Lysandra into the rift. Appearing just outside of the gate, Lysandra widened her eyes in disbelief when she saw the destruction around the kingdom. Large chunks of ground and forest were replaced with deep craters that were still burning from the attack. Looking back at the fortified castle with a barrier rotating around the kingdom, Lysandra turned to Shiro in absolute shock. Did you do all of this, Teach? Yeah, why? Why? Because aren't you supposed to be an ice mage? How is this even possible? She cried out. I haven't told you, but I have another class. Snowmancer. I can create anything as long as I have the blueprint in my mind. Shiro explained briefly while pointing at her head. Don't explain it as if it's just a Sunday picnic. Lysandra retorted as she had the urge to flip a table. Don't worry about it. Shiro smiled lightly and waved her hands. I swear, in the time that you have trained me, the most used sentence has got to be don't worry about it. Lysandra replied as she massaged her eyes. After waiting a short while, they saw the army make their way to the front of the gate. Okay, listen up. Shiro shouted out as she used mana to amplify her voice. After several years of constant struggle between us and the demons, they have finally had enough. They're going to bring everything they have into this war. Hearing her words, some of the soldiers became downcast. However, I can say that since they're bringing everything they have, it is also a prime opportunity for us to completely decimate them. You see that castle? Under my magic, I have transformed it into an armed fortress that held off against the first wave of attacks easily and had even destroyed the attacking unit. As the humans who have stood strong against the demon race, are you going to give up now? I swear to God, if you say yes, I'll break you apart first. Shiro finished with a grin. No. The army shouted out loud since having a fortress like that point at them was the last thing they wanted. Plus, some of them had even gone to the night raid with Shiro, so they knew a little of her prowess. Good. We're going to send these demons back to hell where they belong. Each of you follow your captain in command. Captains follow the general. I want this army to split up and move separately. Split yourself into 5 divisions and move out. I'll give you your commands once you're en route to the enemy. Lysandra, you follow me. Watching the army split themselves evenly into 5 divisions numbering around 20,000 men strong, Shiro smiled in satisfaction. They had several months to know who they were under, so finding their higher-ups were easy. Would you mind giving me a lift? Shiro asked with a smile. Nodding her head, transformed herself into a phoenix and waited for the duo to hop on before flying upwards. As the army moved out, Shiro noticed the king and queen within the forefront of the 3rd division. So they're in the middle. Convenient. Shiro thought to herself with a smile. Finally, it's time for war. Division 1 and 2, I want you to split up and make your way towards Kino Forest. Division 3, stay on course and meet the demons. However, make sure that you're not too close since our numbers are a little limited. Division 4 and 5, I want you to split up to the left and go to Harrow's Edge. Shiro ordered over the crystal. The army was shocked at the sudden presence of a voice near their ear. Don't be shocked. This is a transmission crystal that I've set up on your uniforms. Shiro lied without a hint of hesitation. However, there was still one more thing she had to do. Since it would be strange for her to insert her mana into the king and queen, she was going to use the communicators as a catalyst since she had already set up the needed sequences. Looking at the army splitting up below them, she narrowed her eyes before turning to Lysandra. Take this, you'll be helping me snipe a few important targets from up here, she said as she handed Lysandra a weakened version of her Eclipse particle cannon. The mana and recoil would have been too much for Lysandra if she didn't weaken it. The hell is this? Lysandra asked in confusion. The weapon I used to kill the generals. As for how you use it, just aim down the scope and fire when it lines up with their head. As for the more powerful generals, flick this switch and wait 10 seconds for the charge up. Shiro explained while pointing at the parts. All right. Lysandra nodded her head. Looking at the rail sniper in her hands, she couldn't believe that something like this could kill a general. Shiro only shook her head with a small smile after seeing the doubt on Lysandra's face. Looking back at the battlefield, she narrowed her eyes as she could see the demon army in the distance. Like hell, the enemy is 250k strong. Isn't this more than 300k units? She muttered. Just a quick glance allowed her to roughly estimate the enemy's army size. This meant that she needed to defeat them even though they only had 100k men. As for their formation, the Gastus were at the forefront of the army, followed by Krana and the Igni Colossus. The Verkus will show up later when casualties start to pile up since they're corpse parasites. We can't see the Fandas yet since they're in stealth. Damn, 300k might just be a small portion of their army nearby. Shiro frowned. However, the army number wasn't her only concern. The Gastus had a high level of physical resistance, so they were the perfect tanks to protect the mages, Krana, and the archers, Igni Colossus. But as she took a better look at the enemy, she noticed that they were holding balls of energy in their hands. Wait, isn't that demon essence? Shiro muttered in shock. When demons die, they drop an item called demon essence. But much like mana stones, a small amount is also released naturally into the air upon death. Could they have allowed us to attack them for this essence? Shiro wondered. After the attack, they would naturally let their guard down a little, which meant a prime opportunity to counterattack for the demons. The fact that they tried to bombard the kingdom proved this, and if it wasn't for Shiro, the attack would have succeeded. Forming a small semicircle, the demon army started to chant in synchronization. What are they doing? Following their chant, the surrounding mana surged crazily towards their location as a 3-layers magic circle appeared in the air. A 4th circle flickered slightly as it was struggling to be formed. Holy sh*t, they're summoning an avatar. Shiro widened her eyes in shock. She now knew why they had been allowed them to attack the camps and the fort. Using demon essence in a way similar to how one would use mana stones, they were trying to summon an avatar to the battlefield. It was what the Black Monarchy did in New York, then they summoned a giant monster using the totem ritual. Swiping her hand in front of her, Shiro made an anti-aircraft cannon and loaded it up with a mana disruption bullet. Bang. Shooting the 4th magic circle, she sighed in relief when she saw it shatter apart like glass. Tier 3 might be still within reason for her, but Tier 4 was a definite no-go. All divisions, have your fire for now. The demons are planning to use demon essence to summon a monster. The more you kill them, the more powerful the monster. Shiro called out to the army. Yura. Just as she had set down the order, an ear-rupturing scream could be heard reverberating all over the battlefield. A giant portal opened up as 2 pairs of arms ripped it open and forced its way through. Ancient Callus Magner LVL 85. Boss. Weakened due to broken summoning circle. Base level 150. HP 100 000 MP /. It had dark purple scales. For arms, 2 giant translucent wings that glistened with a myriad of colors and 6 pairs of neon purple eyes that sent shivers down one's spine with a single look. Damn, they really aren't taking any chances, are they? Shiro muttered with a slightly forced smile. Division 4 and 2. I want you to focus fire on the Callus Magner. Division 1 and 5, I want you to shoot the Igni Colossus in the back. As for Division 3, I want you to take all the focus from the other divisions, but don't fight. Focus on running away while making sure that they aren't able to attack the other divisions. If you see them trying to attack the other divisions, attack them back. Shiro shouted. Understood. They replied seriously. Tracing her finger down the body of her sniper, Shiro created a few upgrades as she aimed towards the ancient Callus Magner. Currently, the Callus Magner was the biggest problem on the battlefield. Following that was the Igni Colossus due to their long-range power. By getting rid of these two first, the chances of victory would increase. Of course, she could also allow the soldiers to transform now to increase their power. But if she did that, she wouldn't know who the spy was. She had to let them make the first move. Yura. Crying out in anger from the tiny magic that the soldiers sent towards it, the Callus Magner snarled before flapping his wings. Boom. His body slowly lifted up into the air. However, Shiro wasn't about to let it attack from the air. TZZZ. Several Tier 3 magic circles wrapped around the barrel of her sniper as she narrowed her eyes. She didn't need to destroy both wings, just one was needed. Boom. Firing the sniper, the recoil instantly smacked her off the back of Ian. But this was the least of her concerns. Looking towards the Callus Magner, Shiro widened her eyes when she saw only a faint scorch on the wing. You've got to be kidding me, she cried out. Key. Landing back on Yin's back, Shiro looked at the battlefield with a frown. Something must be missing. The system wouldn't give me a quest that I can't do. I know that there is a spy, Lysandra is a key member, and she also has her sword. Then what am I missing? Division 3, pull back a little more. You're too close to the enemy. Division 4, put your back into your attacks. They're too weak, she commanded. While she was doing this, Lysandra was laying on Yin's back while sniping the Igni Colossus. As the battle continued, the situation started to turn in their favor. Even though the Callus Magner was still alive, they were at least able to kill some of the other demons on the battlefield. Of course, the casualties would have increased massively if not for the fact that Shiro was tanking the Callus Magner together with Ian. Boom. Quickly dodging another fire breath, Yin's facial expression wasn't looking too good since she was currently on a thin line between life and death. One wrong move, and it was over. How could you expose your darling baby to this kind of torture? Bad parent. Ian cried out her injustice in her mind. However, she knew that Shiro couldn't exactly help it either. Without Ian, there was no way that she could have kept the Callus Magner busy. Swooping down with Ian, Shiro had her fly close to the ground while aiming her particle cannon at the boss. Glaring at the girl who had been giving him so much trouble, the boss gritted his teeth in frustration. Yura. Opening his mouth, it split into 3 parts as spots of light started to converge together into a golden orb of fire element. Ian, once I fire my shot, jump into the rift, Shiro said as she kept her focus down the scope. The mana that was radiating from the sniper was increasing with each passing second as it was several times more powerful than the shot she fired using the fortress. Key. Crying out in acknowledgement, Ian started to increase her speed. This way, she could force the boss to fire his attack earlier. All divisions, focus fire on the Callus Magner when I say fire, Shiro shouted out. She was going to bait out the spy with this along with dealing some extra damage. Ready. Just as she was about to say fire, the queen released a dense explosion of darkness element. Demonic possession. She grinned as the soldiers widened their eyes when they saw their skin slowly turn dark purple like the demons. Since Shiro was going to fight against the Callus Magner at full force with the support of the army, she thought that this was a prime opportunity to get rid of Shiro, who had been a constant pain. Even the king was shocked that his skin was slowly turning purple as well. How could you? He muttered in disbelief. Ha. If asterisk king knew it. Shiro grinned as she snapped her fingers. Asterisk, boom. A surge of electricity exploded out of every soldier's body as nanotech armor wrapped around them. The demon possession was instantly broken as the queen widened her eyes in disbelief. Even the king was wrapped up in nanotech armor as he was surprised to see his class change. Nanotech Rail Berserker. Information about the class instantly flowed through his mind as two heavy axes appeared in front of him. Instinctively grabbing the axes by the handle, he felt power surge around him as it reminded him of his peak days. Naturally, with the change in class destroying all signs of demon possession, the previous debuffs that were placed on his disappeared as well. You're a succubus. He glared at the queen. The queen didn't respond as she was trying to figure out how Shiro had negated the effects of the demon seed. She had been overlooking the entire army for a while and knew that everyone had taken the demon seeds. Impossible, she muttered. Nothing's impossible, Shiro replied. Asterisk, tease easy. The queen's communicator suddenly burst apart with nanotech wires wrapping around her and stopped her from moving around. All units prepare the rail cannon. Shiro shouted out as the soldiers' armors lit up with neon blue circuits and created a weakened version of Shiro's rail sniper in their hands. Knowing that it wasn't time to dawdle on such matters, all units aimed towards the boss, while their visors would help them aim their weapons properly. Fire! Shiro shouted out as she pulled the trigger. Asterisk, boom. All of the bullets crashed against the attack as it exploded on impact. Quickly flying into the rift, Een retreated from the area. Appearing besides the queen, the three of them landed on their feet and dragged the queen up by her collar. So Succubus was being the spy hard. Shiro chuckled darkly. However, Lysandra placed her hand on Shiro's arm, causing her to stop. She could feel the disbelief and fear from every shiver in Lysandra's hand. Is this true, Mum? Lysandra asked as her voice cracked slightly. She clearly saw what had happened from above, but she didn't want to believe. Jay, don't call me Mum. I've killed her long ago. The succubus tried to spit on Lysandra's face, but was stopped by Shiro. The spit was frozen in midair before crumbling away. What did you just say? The king widened his eyes in fury. After his mind was cleared, he remembered how her behavior took an obvious turn but ignored it due to his love. But now that the succubus came clean, he realized that the wife he loved was replaced. Her scream at the end was king arousing. She grinned fearlessly. Since she was captured, she knew her final outcome was death. My brother, my mother, Lysandra muttered as tears started to form. Shiro stayed silent since she knew Lysandra needed to vent out her frustrations. Why my brother? Why my mother? Lysandra asked. Her tears started to fall as her grip around the Imperium blade tightened to the point of bleeding. So many wise child. Just know that I loved every second of it. You mother's face when she died, your brother's face when I stole his essence and turned him into a demon. All of it by my hand, arg. She was cut off when Lysandra's sword slashed against her eyes and blinded her. The king was shocked at her outburst, but allowed her to do what she wants. He knew that Lysandra loved her family the most, more than he ever will. For her to suffer this kind of shock, he wasn't surprised at her reaction. Your judgment is death, she cried out as a huge amount of light blades appeared in the air and skewered the succubus. Due to the nature of the holy swords, sizzling sounds could be heard from her body before she turned to ash. Tilting her head back, Lysandra screamed into the sky in sadness as blood started to leak from her eyes. Shiro narrowed her eyes at this skill. Light Goddess's Divine Judgment, she thought with a frown. Light Goddess's Divine Judgment, a skill that the light hero loved to use when attacking monsters. Due to the holy nature of the skill, it had an increase in damage whenever he used it against monsters. It was also a symbol to show that he was one of God's chosen. Asterisk, boom. Light descended from the skies as a pillar of energy erupted from Lysandra. Her blood tears continued to fall as she was releasing all of her anguish. All divisions, attack the enemy and don't let them get close. Lysandra's classing up. Shiro called over the crystal as she knew of this phenomenon. Whenever a person is given a chance at a class up regardless of level, Example being, when she was offered the class of Imperial Ice Queen, they would be supplied with the missing levels. Right now, Lysandra was currently experiencing a giant power boost so that she fits the level requirement of the class. Clicking her fingers, jet boosters formed on the soldier's armor, providing them with more options to harass the demon army without being in danger. It seems like you're the reason for this, the king said with a small smile. Yeah, and here I thought that your class was just Ice Mage. You've been hiding quite a bit from me. He chuckled, as if I could tell you. Your mind was being swayed by the succubus. Plus, if the enemy knew we had this kind of power, they wouldn't send their best men towards us now, would they? Shiro grinned. True. The king nodded. If the succubus had known that she was capable of this, she probably wouldn't have shown herself. Not only that, but she would have also warned the army and focused on wearing them down before sending in the full force. But let's take care of the callous Maganar first. I've been dying to show my full strength. Shiro grinned. Shiro called out. Got it, Mum. Let's not hold back anymore. Laughed as she shifted herself back into a phoenix. Hoping on Yin's back, they shot up into the sky. Breathing out heavily, Shiro calmed her mind. Jumping off Yin's back, she free-falled towards the callous Magnar. Reaching out her hands, 2-tier, 3 magic circles appeared on her wrist. Boom. Nanotech armor wrapped around her entire body. Coolant cells could be seen near the back as magnetic discs appeared behind her. Rail Cannon A7, A8, A9, and A10 are online. Shiro muttered coldly. Kish, 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 kish. Materializing near the magnetic discs, for matte black rail cannons could be seen with neon blue circuit patterns pulsing on the main chassis. Generation 2 Igneous Anti-Material Rifle online. Just as she said that, the hip compartment of her nanotech armor shifted to reveal 2 more magnetic discs. Nanobots started to converge around the discs as 2 anti-material rifles started to form. This will do for now. Shiro frowned as she started to feel pain once more. However, she was satisfied with the amount of firepower she could produce. All systems online, Generation 2 Battle Maiden activate. She commanded. Ambient mana surged towards her, charging up her armor. Neon blue circuits started to spread through the surface as miniature ion thrusters materialized on her armor. With a thunderous boom, Shiro launched herself towards the callous Magnar. Shifting her body in mid-air, she aimed all 6 weapons and fired immediately. Yura. Unlike before, she was able to draw blood from the boss. Not bad. Shiro nodded in satisfaction. Controlling the thrusters with her mind, she quickly dodged the boss's attack as her increase in speed left a faint trail of light behind her due to the thrusters. Looking at the constant bombardment against the boss, the king couldn't help but open his mouth in shock. While he was more powerful than Shiro in his prime, if he were to face off against her at the same level, which is now, he can guarantee an instant death. There was simply no logical way of facing off against that kind of firepower when they're at the same level. Incredible, he muttered. While Shiro was bombarding the boss, wasn't idle either. Shifting herself back to her human form, she would send arrows of dark star element towards the boss. While it did do damage, it was almost negligible. Sweat started to drip from Shiro's forehead as she continued her ruthless onslaught against the boss. While she did technically have the upper hand right now, it wasn't easy. A single misstep was all it took for her to be killed instantly. Looking at the battlefield, she could see that the army was winning so far. Casualties had increased, but it was still within acceptable range. Maybe I should leave the boss to Lisa. Even if I kill it, the EXP would just be wasted. That I can't have. But if I leave it alone, the casualties would shoot up instantly. She thought with a frown. Quickly boosting herself up into the air, she aimed all her weapons and fired at one of the boss's eyes. Boom. Yura. Flinching back from the pain, the boss glared at her. Minimal damage, huh? I guess that's fine as well. Shiro muttered. The next moment, the boss spread his wings open as mana gathered around him. T. Shiro widened her eyes. She knew exactly what kind of move this was and the damage it could cause. Removing the limiters on her weapons, she allowed to fire at will towards the boss while she flew higher into the air. The further away she was, the better. The boss had his aggro on her, so the rest of the army wouldn't be targeted. Reaching the clouds, Shiro made an air mask before flicking her wrists. Asterisk kish kish kish. All 6 weapons disassembled into a swarm of nanobots that reconstructed itself into a giant cannon within her arms. The Eclipse Orbital Cannon. The strongest weapon she could configure to work in synchronization with her current armor. The weapon itself was massive and was almost 4 times as big as Shiro. Decorated with matte black panels, mana condensing coils along with solar focusing coils, the weapon was a sight to behold. While the cannon was charging up, Shiro had to make sure the boss followed her past the clouds. Once she was up there, she'll be able to redirect the sunlight to overcharge her cannon. Snapping her fingers, several glacial arrows appeared beside her. A single gesture from her caused all the arrows to shoot towards the boss, but they did minimal damage. All that they achieved was shattering into 1,000 pieces. However, that was what Shiro was aiming for. Clutching her hand into a fist, the ice crystals surged towards the boss's rear and formed into a giant ice spear. Oh gosh, Mum's at it again. In flinched slightly while turning her head away. However, she couldn't help but open her fingers a little and peek towards the boss just to see its reaction. Shiro, who had just saw this from the corner of her eyes, felt her lips twitch. Why didn't you want to look away? Little kids shouldn't look at indecent things. She thought in her mind, but didn't stop what she was doing. A 3-layered magic circle appeared around her hands as lightning, shadow, and dark star element wrapped around the spear. Both the lightning and dark star elements were highly destructive and couldn't be taken lightly, especially if it was targeting one's most vital area. Flicking her fingers upwards, Shiro watched as the spear penetrated the boss. Silence dominated the battlefield for both demons and humans as everyone opened their mouth in absolute shock. They had just witnessed the boss get pierced by a giant ice spear in the chrysanthemum. Even the boss was sent into shock as he had never felt this kind of pain before. Due to the nature of the elements that Shiro had infused the spear with, they could hear the sizzle along with smoke coming from the rear as the spear was actively cooking and destroying the rear at the same time. Asterisk Yura. After the boss recovered from his shock, his first instinct was to scream as loud as he could in order to distract him from the pain that he was feeling. Crashing against the ground, the boss covered his rear and started to roll around in hopes of dissipating the pain. Wincing at the unsightly demeanor of the boss, even the demons couldn't blame him for rolling around like a child who stubbed his toe. As for the humans, they took this moment to kill more demons. Naturally, they also pretended to not know Shiro. Who is this crazy girl? Coming here and violating the boss. How shameless. They collectively thought. Meanwhile, Shiro massaged her eyes slightly when she saw the boss rolling around. Her initial plan was to increase her aggro so that the boss would fly towards her, but she didn't expect his pain tolerance to be so weak. TCH, I'll do it myself then. Shiro clicked her tongue and flew up into the clouds. Pushing the clouds aside, Shiro shielded her eyes from the sunlight while her weapons started to hum with energy. Taking a deep breath, she set her thrusters to keep her floating in the air while aiming her weapon at the boss. Tracing her fingers on the body of the weapon, Shiro started to augment the weapon with her compatible elements. Tier 3 Lightning, Metal, Shadow, and Dark Star. Feeling the surge of mana above him, the boss gritted his teeth and ripped the ice spear out from his rear and flew upwards. Several orbs of void black energy appeared around him as he sent them flying towards her. Too late. Shiro grinned as she pulled the trigger on her weapon. Not only that, but she flicked her fingers and sent the ice spear towards the boss's ass once more. Leave him alone already. The demons cried out in their minds with pity. Asterisk Yura. The pain of being pierced again caused the boss's aim to go awry and missed his shot entirely. Asterisk Boom. Slamming against the boss's head, the beam of energy drilled into his armor ruthlessly. Both the augmented shadow element and dark star element ate away at his armor like it was paper. Blood splattered everywhere as the boss quickly twisted his body so that it wouldn't hurt him as much. Crashing against his hard, armored back, the beam of energy started to deflect to the surroundings. Frowning at the outcome, Shiro truly wanted to curse the system. Feeling aggrieved by her current progress, She truly wondered how other people could finish this quest with a higher grade. Why the hell would you give me a quest this hard? This princess is a F** king reincarnator with a triple S grade class and could only serve as a back scratcher. Are you kidding me? Dong. Just as she finished her cursing, she heard a bell toll ring out as the light pillar shattered apart to show Lysandra in her new form. 6 pairs of angel wings spread out from her back as long blonde hair flowed to her waist. A pair of crystal blue eyes that were still slightly red looked at the sky in sorrow. She wore a white robe with golden highlights and light, plated silver armor around her shoulders, arms, legs, and torso. However, Shiro didn't focus on any of that. Why the hell is her bust bigger than mine? She's just like Maddie. One class up, and she grows up. The F** King Injustice. Where can I complain? Shiro thought to herself while gritting her teeth in frustration. Surely the Sylph class would give her a better body proportion, right? She remembered seeing decently endowed Sylphs in her old life, so she should be the same. This was totally not one of the key reasons for picking the class up along with more development options. Cough. Lysandra LVL 75, Light Goddess's Incarnation. Looking at Lysandra's level, Shiro's eyes constricted for a moment. While the hero was dubbed the Light Goddess's Chosen, Lysandra was actually her incarnation. Her heart pounded in shock as she couldn't take her eyes off Lysandra. She's not the one who killed me, so why am I directing my anger at her? She's still the same pupil that followed me around calling me Teach. Shiro thought to herself as she shook her head in order to distract herself from the hatred that was boiling up in her mind. Moving her gaze to Shiro, Lysandra had the urge to run into her embrace and cry out her heart, but knew that this wasn't the time just yet. She had to end this war. Flapping her wings, she flickered towards the boss faster than Shiro could track her. Drawing a thin line in front of her, she pulled out a holy blade that sent shivers down Shiro's spine. Divine augmentation, Lysandra said as she layered the Imperium blade and the holy blade together. Shrouding the Imperium blade in a holy aura, light particles started to flicker off the edges as she swung it gently at the boss. Boom. A blade of light descended from the skies as it cleaved the boss in two and split the earth apart to form a deep chasm that one couldn't see the bottom of. Not only that, the night sky also brightened up to the point where it was almost indistinguishable from daylight. One attack from Lysandra was all it took to turn night into day and end the boss that had been troubling them. Watching the boss get killed in a single strike, the demons panicked and quickly retreated. Everyone, return to the kingdom for now, Lysandra shouted out. It was dangerous to pursue since they'll be in demon territory. Plus, with the existence of a Tier 6 demon lord, one wrong move and everything will be over. Nodding their heads, the soldiers followed her orders and retreated. As the army retreated, Shiro disassembled her armor before gesturing to Een. Een nodded her head and shifted into a phoenix. Carrying Shiro towards Lysandra, Een hovered a short distance behind her. Lisa, Shiro called out. Teach. Lysandra turned around as her facade instantly shattered and tears started to form. Teach, she cried out and dove into Shiro's embrace. Receiving her hug, Shiro didn't push Lysandra away as she gently stroked her hair. Shiro didn't know what to say, so she opted to stay silent and allow Lysandra to cry her heart out. Mother Hick, Brother Hick, why did this have to happen to me? Lysandra cried out as her heart tightened with grief. I don't know, Shiro replied. There wasn't anything else she could say to console her. The best thing for Lysandra right now was to just vent all of her emotions out. Gesturing for Een to bring them down, Shiro sat down near a tree with Lysandra still in her embrace. Sitting there patiently, she watched as the night slowly turned to day. Lysandra's sobs slowly died down as she calmed herself. Better? Shiro asked with a faint smile. Lysandra nodded her head slightly. A blush crept on her face as she felt embarrassed from crying into Shiro's modest bosom. Looking at Lysandra, whose wings would flap a little from nervousness every now and again, Shiro couldn't help but feel her heart soften. Even if she was now the incarnation of the goddess that supported her killer. After all, Lysandra didn't know anything, nor was she the one who killed her. Let's head back, shall we? We need to figure out what to do after this. The demons will probably find other ways into the mainland. Shiro smiled slightly and flicked Lyssandra's forehead. Oh, fine. Lysandra rubbed her head a little before frowning. Shaking her head, she flapped her wings lightly while floating behind her. Een frowned a little before she too shifted herself back to her human form. Spreading out her wings, she floated to the right of Shiro. Little Lys, you should walk. Een pouted. Nope. I'm tired after killing the boss, so I should be flying. Big sis, Een should be walking since you've been flying this entire battle. Lysandra retorted while sticking out her tongue. While Een did like the sound of Big Sis Een, she was Mum's only baby, okay? She didn't need a sister. Okay, maybe Kanae is an exception, but not Lysandra. I'm a phoenix. Have you ever seen a phoenix spend most of the time walking? Een pouted. No, but I have seen you spend most of your time sitting. Lysandra retorted, not backing down at all. While she was joking around with Een, Shiro could tell that she was using this to distract her from her sorrow. Een heaved her chest up and down in frustration as she didn't know how to retort. Lysandra had been spending all her time training, so she couldn't call her lazy. Tears started to form in her eyes as her face slowly reddened up. Looking at Een, who was on the verge of tears, Lysandra couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Surely a phoenix who was in the realm of C-class wouldn't cry this easily, right? Briefly glancing at the two, Shiro rolled her eyes. Why the hell do I feel like I've just picked up another daughter? One was a miniature version of her with void purple wings, while the other was her disciple with 6 pairs of angel wings. It was the literal definition of devil on one shoulder and angel on the other. Will you two hush for a bit? Shiro sighed tiredly. But Mum, Een turned her head at Shiro as the tears started to fall. Yeah, eat something and calm down. Shiro sighed as she shoved a mana stone lollipop into her mouth. One lollipop can't trick this baby. Een pouted but didn't throw the lollipop away. Fine then, too. Shiro replied and instantly shoved another on in her mouth. In dash. 3. Shiro cut her off by shoving a third one in. B dash. 4. Mu dash. 5. When the 5th one was brought out, Een dispelled her wings and started to walk happily. With 5 treats in her mouth, she didn't mind letting Lysandra fly around her mum for a bit. In the end, Lysandra couldn't follow them out anyways. Right? Big sis Yin's a glutton. Lysandra pouted and turned her head away. At least one of my daughters is docile. Shiro thought to herself, but paused. Hold up, when did she become my daughter? Sighing out tiredly, Shiro massaged her eyes and realized a small problem. Within a single quest, she had basically picked up 2 daughters. Not only that, one was a phoenix and the other was a goddess incarnation. One was destruction and the other could technically be called creation due to her element. That being said, it wasn't like she could bring Lysandra out with her. If she tried to form a contract with her, it might be blocked by her contract with Een. But she's a goddess incarnation. Would it even work? Not only that, but could she possibly find out about what happened between me and the light hero? Shiro thought. She didn't know what being the incarnation meant, but the possibility of Lysandra knowing what happened was there, and it wasn't something that Shiro would like her to know if possible. After all, she had been quite bloodthirsty back then. After her reincarnation, she had actually become quite docile when compared to her previous self. Everyone has a past that they don't want to expose after all. So what's this whole thing about? Shiro asked, sweeping her glance at Lysandra's wings. Emin, are you curious, Teach? Lysandra asked as her wings fluttered slightly. A little. Shiro nodded. Well, I don't know either. Lysandra looked to the side embarrassingly. Humph. At least this baby knew what she was when she classed up. Een chipped in. Een darling. Yeah, Mum. Shut it. URG. Een was about to cry when Shiro stuffed a few more mana stone lollipops into her arms. This caused her to instantly shut up. TSK, glutton. Shiro rolled her eyes mentally before turning back to Lysandra. What do you mean? Didn't you use one of the skills in that battle then? She asked curiously. I did, but I only coughed no 2 skills. Lysandra scratched her cheek embarrassingly. During her class up, she had gained massive power-ups regarding her stats, and had also gained passives such as flight due to her angel wings. Not only that, her race was also changed into the divine race. But, despite all of that, she only knew of 2 skills. The first was divine augmentation, which she used against the boss, and the second was divine blessing. This skill would allow her to form a protective barrier around her and her ally. It would also heal them for a small portion of their health while increasing the damage of their next attack. After explaining the skills to Shiro, Lysandra waited for her reaction like an obedient bunny. Not bad, I guess. The first skill is good for offense, but the second skill is alright. I already have a way to heal and increase my attack power. Shiro responded. Oh. Lysandra looked a little downcast after hearing her response. Haha, this baby is more useful. Een puffed up her non-existent chest in smugness. Che, unlike Lisa, you can't kill a mid to high-tier C-class enemy. Shiro rolled her eyes. PFT. Lysandra couldn't help but snicker after seeing Een get scolded slightly. What are you laughing at? Een gritted her teeth in annoyance. You. Lysandra stuck her tongue out. While Shiro was glad that Een had someone to play with, she was also a little annoyed since it meant more trouble for her. Gah? I'll fight you. Een cried out as she spread out her wings. Of course, she kept her lollipops in a pouch first. They were precious commodities after all. Who's scared of who? This princess will fight you too. Lysandra glared back. Who's a princess? It's obviously me. Fine, then I'm the queen. You're not the queen. Mum's the queen. Fine, then I'm the first princess. Shiro could feel a vein slowly bulge up as it threatened to burst. Listening to the two quarreling behind her, Shiro snapped as she quickly turned around and grabbed both of them by the cheek. Shut it and play nicely. Shiro glared as two ice spears appeared and aimed towards their rears. Of course, the tips were rounded off since Shiro's didn't want to kill them. Remembering what the spear did to the boss, Een paled slightly. Lysandra didn't see Shiro do the task, but she remembered seeing a horrifying wound on the boss when she killed it. After seeing the spears, she finally realized what had happened and paled. Surely Teach won't be that ruthless, right? Mum wouldn't harm your baby girl like this, right? I'm barely of age. Try me. Shiro narrowed her eyes as the spear inched closer. Lysandra did the smart thing and didn't let out a single sound. I swear you two are like sisters. Always fighting. Shiro sighed as she thawed the ice spear. Can't you two be nice to each other for a while? She asked. She still had the problem regarding the mainland and the fallen god corpse, so she didn't want to waste too much of her time on these two rascals. Fine, I'll be nice because Mum said so. Een huffed. I'll follow Teach's orders. Lysandra nodded. Good. Shiro smiled in satisfaction. Letting them go, they made their way back to the kingdom. Thankfully, the two followed Shiro's request and didn't fight during their way back. Arriving back at the kingdom, they received the news that the king wanted to talk to them privately. In addition to this, Shiro could detect a sort of reverence from the soldier's eyes when he saw Lysandra. As for Lysandra, her face became stern and her body posture was intimidating. She knew that along with Shiro, she was the kingdom's pillar of support, so she couldn't show any weakness. Een didn't play around either as her face was serious too. While both Een and Lysandra received gazes of reverence, the only kind of gaze that Shiro got was fear. Rubbing her chin, Shiro conjured up a mirror. Am I really that scary? She muttered. Yes. Both Een and Lysandra cried out in their mind. Seeing each other's expression, they instantly knew that they were thinking of the same thing. Shaking their hands together, they had found a common ground. Mum/Teach is nice, but she's goddamn scary. Arriving at the king's study room, they could see the king shuffling through several records. Ah, you're here, the king said respectfully. Stop. God, your tone makes my skin crawl. Shiro said as her face was filled with a tiny amount of disgust. You know, you can't just say that to a king, right? He said as his eyes twitched a little. Oh, don't give me that crap. What are you gonna do? Bite me? Shiro retorted fearlessly. Watching the two interact, Lysandra decided to be a good child and look away. What the eye can't see, the mind won't think. Sorry, father, but you're going to have to put up with Teach alone. Lysandra thought. If the king knew what Lysandra had thought, he would have cried out at the injustice. **** anyways. Since you've managed to send the demons back to their continent, we should talk about what's going to happen next. The king sat down. You should know about Lysandra's true identity now that her class is revealed, the king said in seriousness. Wait, father, what do you mean by true identity? Lysandra frowned. Darling, you should know that you're special by now, right? No normal person could be part of the divine race. The king smiled sadly. Is this about Lisa being the light goddess's incarnation? Shiro narrowed her eyes. In could tell that things were on thin ice since she knew about what had happened to Shiro. Even though she was bickering with Lysandra before, she still cared about her like a sister. Yes, it is. The king nodded. In, before you tell us about her identity, I want to ask you a question. Shiro said, raising her finger. What kind of question? The king tilted his head curiously. Looking at Shiro's demeanor and aura, he could tell that she was stopping her killing intent from spilling out, which led him to ask himself this. What kind of question could incite such killing intent from her? From the entire time that he had seen her, she had been quite friendly if you turn a blind eye to some of her actions. But never had she shown her hatred like this. Do you know of the class light bearing hero and the name? Shiro asked as she trailed off. She couldn't suppress herself as her aura slowly leaked out. Ikari Lumiere, Shiro said, almost hissing out the name in anger.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.